Hello, I'm Christopher Kenworthy and welcome to Mastering Color Grading in After Effects. In this lesson we'll be looking at setting levels. As you can see from this clip here called Slow Walk Movie, we have a slow motion clip of two girls walking down a hill and it's not exactly perfect. Clearly it was well lit at the time, but the dark areas look a little milky and the colors aren't very saturated. It looks okay, but this is something you might have shot in a rush or something that the camera automatically compensated for. It doesn't look quite right. There are lots of ways we can go about color correcting. There are countless ways of color correcting, but I want to use the color finesse tool. So I'm just going to type finesse in here. There it is. Synthetic aperture color finesse 3. I'm going to drag the slow walk clip down to the create new composition button there, and we have what we need. Then I'm going to drag the color finesse 3 filter onto the clip. Now when this opens, you may see this. This is what's known as the simplified interface, even though it looks anything but simplified. I would just close that off by hitting that triangle there, because the simplified interface is something you can use occasionally to make quick corrections, but for the most part, let's go for the full interface here. Just click that, and Color Finesse 3 opens up, and there's your clip. Now your first reaction upon seeing this may be, how am I ever going to understand this? These are the scopes and there are lots of them. It looks, as I click through these, it looks very confusing. There's an awful lot to take in. My advice is to ignore all this. You don't need it right now. It's like learning to fly an aeroplane. When you first get into an aeroplane, you see all those controls and readouts. It just looks outrageous. Once you've learned to fly an aeroplane, you want more controls and readouts. It will be the same for you with color correction. At first, all you want is a pretty image, and I can show you how to get that very quickly. In time, you will come to love these scopes and readouts, and you'll want more of them. The other thing that can happen when you first launch this is you look at all these controls, and you click through them and think, that's a lot to learn, and an awful lot to have control of. I just want to make my image pretty. How am I going to do that? The good news is that there is so much on offer here, but you don't need to use all of it. For most color correction, you'll use 1, 2, maybe 3 of these settings. Color correction can be done for a clip in 10 seconds. I want you to set the scope up here to RGB WFM. That stands for red, green, blue waveforms. And that's what we have here. This just shows you how much red, how much green, how much blue there is in the image. That's all you need to know. You don't even need to know that now. Just ignore it. Look over here at the image and you'll do well for the rest of the lesson. Now there are many controls that you can use to alter your image, but the one that we'll use most often is here, the RGB tab. So just click on that. You can see it goes a slightly lighter grey. And here you have the master controls. To activate these, you can check that box there and then check that box there, but you don't need to. The moment you make an adjustment to any of these sliders, I'll just show you, let's move the gamma slightly, those boxes are checked. So rather than switching things on, just start doing the work that you want to do and you'll get what you need. Just going to click reset down here. Okay, so here's our image. We have a look at it. It's a bit milky. It's not what we want. What's the first thing we do? Over here, you can see master pedestal. Pedestal is another word for shadows or blacks as they are known, depending on which software you're using. In Color Finesse, it's pedestal. It's the stuff that's at the bottom of the image, the shadow. So we're going to grab that slider and just move it to the left. Now watch the image as you do that and you'll see that it goes darker. That's what you want. You are making the dark areas darker. That's what you need in an image. The dark areas should be dark, not milky like they were before. But the problem we have now is that the whole image is dark. So how do you make it light? Over here we have the master gain. And gain is also known as whites, highlights. Depending on the software you use, lots of different names for it. Here it's gain, and it just means the bright parts of the image. So I'm going to drag that up because it's too dark. We want to make the lighter parts of the image lighter. And there you can see the image is already looking a lot better than it was before. The midtones might not be exactly how we want them to look. So the midtones are controlled through the master gamma here. So I'm just going to click that, and I'll try moving it two ways, see what happens. If we move it to the right, I think that makes that look more milky again, like it did earlier. So I'm going to move that down to the left, and that just darkens things slightly and enriches the colors. It's just a small adjustment, but it's significant in terms of the result. Now, to see what work you've done and how things have changed as you've been working, up here you can click on Source, and that shows you what you started with. Then you click on Result, and you see how much difference you've made. It's a beautiful thing to see what an enormous difference you've made with just a few adjustments. Because if I reset and do all that again, it can be done as quickly as this. You drag the pedestal down, you drag the gain up, and you pull the gamma down. That's a 10-second adjustment to go from this to this. Now while you're working, you can also use something called the split source, which is here. If you click on that, this shows you how the image looked before you started and what work you've done to it over here. And if you see these tiny little triangles at the top and the bottom, you can grab those and just move them around so that, let's say we wanted to see the skin tones in particular, I might want to split the image across the face like that. And there we can see how the skin looked originally and how it looks after we've done some work. The split source reference is something you'll use all the time. Not least, it's very satisfying to see what work you've done. That just keeps you motivated while you're working. So that's done. All you need to do now is click OK, and back in the main After Effects window you can see the final result. In the next lesson we're going to look at ways to go deeper into the control of the light and dark areas of the image so that you can see exactly what you're doing and have full control of every aspect of that image.